I will be, let me just start the slideshow. Okay, so I will be presenting on the legal perspectives on ecosystem services protection for water security in South African cities. And this presentation is based on a joint manuscript by myself and Marisol Bottas that we have already submitted to SAPL. Okay. So the basic outline of the presentation is I start off with a brief background, sketching the current context of water in South Africa, whereafter I provide definitions of the notions of ecosystem services and water security. The third part then looks at the legal framework for water security and the protection of ecosystem services in South Africa, with the aim of looking at specifically the constitutional and legislative basis. And then furthermore, we look at the specific role of local government in ensuring the protection of ecosystem services as well as ensuring water security. Whereafter the last section will then provide an analysis of the instruments in the eThekwini municipality in terms of ecosystem services protection and water security. So the basic premise of this presentation is that we argue that the protection of ecosystem services can add value to the protection and management of water resources and in the attaining of water security in South African cities. So while this role is not made abundantly clear in South African law, there's a strong possibility of this being taken forward at a local government level. So this therefore warrants an investigation into whether the legal framework is, first of all, sufficient to address water security and the protection of ecosystem services, and secondly, whether the practical measures implemented by the eThekwini municipality as a case study are sufficient and sustainable to address the aforementioned. Okay, so moving on. So basically, we all are aware that the current water crisis in South Africa provides considerable uncertainty. This has been emphasized during the whole COVID-19 crisis, but I think the focus of my presentation shows that the COVID-19 crisis has highlighted and exposed many other gaps in society that have been ignored for too long, and many of these refer to basic needs that are connected to ecosystems and to water services provision. Before moving back, so we see that South Africa presents an unsustainable path to severe water problems due to the inability to match investment, for example, due to urban industrial mining and irrigation expansions, to a general scarcity of water, waste treatment plants, and excessive pollution, amongst other things. So this results in cities' natural resources remaining under threat. The development applications that are harmful and destructive to the environment are still being approved. And environmental recommendations on development applications are being ignored, and the systems to ensure that these recommendations are being implemented are also very weak. So therefore, the consumptive manner in which we engage with the natural environment has proven to be entirely unsustainable. So moving forward, the specific context of the study is focused on the interrelation of water security in ecosystem services. So there's no universal or globally accepted definitions of water security in ecosystem services. However, the different frameworks of water security generally indicate to a conflict between human vulnerability and needs versus sustainability in ecosystems. UN Water describes water security as the capacity of a population to safeguard sustainable access to adequate quantities of acceptable quality water for sustaining livelihoods, human well-being, and socioeconomic development, for ensuring protection against waterborne pollution and water-related disasters, and for preserving ecosystems. So in this context, UN Water also states that water security encapsulates complex and interconnected challenges, which highlights water centrality for achieving a larger sense of security, sustainability, development, and well-being. Furthermore, it is also averred that the key to achieving urban water security is to have a balance between the exploitation of water resources and sustaining and protecting urban ecosystem services as natural infrastructure that is critical to people's well-being and livelihoods. Okay. So the concept of ecosystem services, I won't dwell too deep into this because Marisol will present on ecosystem services tomorrow as well. So ecosystem services are defined as the many and varied benefits to humans gifted by the natural environment and from healthy ecosystems. So ecosystems can embody the concept that living organisms continually interact with each other and with the environment to produce complex systems with emergent properties, such that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So there are 4 general categories of ecosystem services. You can see that we have provisioning ecosystem services, which includes the provision of fresh water. We have cultural ecosystem services, which relates to the non-material benefits of ecosystem services. We have regulating ecosystems, which also include water purification as one of the benefits derived, and supporting ecosystems, which support all the above mentioned ecosystems. So ecosystems that naturally capture, filter, store, and release water, such as rivers, wetlands, and mountain catchments, need to be protected, used, and maintained in a sustainable manner to ensure a sustainable water supply of good quality for use on land, in recreation, tourism, and various cultural and religious activities. If this condition is not maintained, they may deteriorate to a level at which they cannot deliver these services. Furthermore, both natural and human activities can affect ecosystems in and off water resources. These activities can destroy the self-cleansing ability of water resources, which plays a major role in accommodating the impacts of such activities on water resources and ensuring the ability of ecosystems to deliver the necessary services. So a healthy, viable aquatic ecosystem is therefore a prerequisite for the water resource to retain its self-cleansing ability and for the resource to maintain its overall integrity. Okay, so the connections I outlined here briefly are how ecosystems relate to the constituents of well-being. I won't dwell too much on this due to time. And so getting to the crux of the study. So the law, South Africa boasts an extensive legal framework that firmly entrenches issues of access to safe water and the protection of water resources. And this framework includes the constitutional environmental right, the environmental legal framework, and sectoral laws that give effect to the rights such as NEMBA and SPLUMA. So adding to these South African environmental laws is South African water law and policy, which I will discuss in the next slide, which are based upon the constitutional recognition of the right of access to sufficient water. So the Constitution places a duty on all spheres of government to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights that are set out in the Bill of Rights, which includes the provisions of Section 24 and Section 27. And this mandate is founded on the premise that a sustainable and equitable supply of water must be accessible to meet the country's social, economic, and environmental water needs for current and future generations. And in addition to this general mandate, the Constitution specifically defines functional areas of competence for each sphere of government, which includes that municipalities may typically exercise both legislative and executive authority in regard to matters listed in Schedules 4B and 5B of the Constitution. So these matters include, amongst others, municipal planning, municipal health services, stormwater management systems in built-up areas, and water and sanitation services. And as a result, municipalities have a duty to protect water resources in terms of both the quality, quantity, and the ecosystem services that may derive from these resources. Okay, so in terms of the overarching framework of NEMA, the principles of environmental management should be taken into account when addressing the protection of ecosystems in municipalities. Municipalities must also consider all factors that can potentially be harmful to or impact on these ecosystems. And furthermore, the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act provides for the conservation, protection, management of the country's ecosystems and protected species. And in terms of the NEMBA, this also applies to ecosystems from which water is sourced for human consumption and which contribute to human health and well-being. Municipalities do not have explicit duties to conserve ecosystems under the NEMBA. However, the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan and the National Biodiversity Framework acknowledge that local government has an increasingly important role to play in biodiversity management. So the need to integrate considerations of biodiversity in policy development, budgeting and planning process in the department responsible for local government affairs is specifically mentioned in the NBSA. Yeah. And then there's also, of course, the National Environmental Protected Areas Act. I will not go into too much detail with that. So getting to the National Water Law and Policy Framework. So national government is endowed with the responsibility for water resources management, and local government is specifically given the duty to ensure the provision of water resources with support from provincial and national government. And through the provisions of the NWA, the nation's water resources are to be protected, used, developed, conserved, managed, and controlled in ways which take into account, amongst others, meeting the basic human needs of the present and future generations, promoting equitable access to water, promoting the efficient, sustainable, and beneficial use of water in the public interest, and promoting and protecting aquatic and associated ecosystems and their biological diversity. So in addition to the NWA, it is required that the minister must determine the reserve for each water resource. And this determination is two-pronged. It seeks to ensure access to sufficient water by setting aside a certain amount of water to meet basic human needs, whilst also setting aside water that is necessary to protect the water ecosystems of the specific water resource. And in the latter case, it is referred to as the ecological reserve, which specifies both the quantity and the quality of water that must remain in the national water resource. So while this determination draws the conceptual link between the ecological and human value of water resources, it is a significant challenge to the government tasked with protecting water resources on the one hand and the need to utilize water for social and economic development on the other hand. And so then we also have the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan and the Draft Water Security Framework, which specifically make reference to water security and the protection of ecosystems, amongst others. Okay, so the attendant responsibilities and duties of local government is set out in the National Law and Policy Framework. And the duties of local government in relation to the protection of the environment are also set out in the White Paper on Local Government, as well as the Local Government Municipal Structures Act and the Systems Act. And these reinforce local government's responsibility to promote a safe and healthy environment, and that services must be delivered in a sustainable way, which includes ecological sustainability. In terms of sustainable municipal services provision, specifically water provision, the inadequate protection of ecosystems and their services invariably affects the availability and quality of water resources, and therefore results in the provision of water resources that are not of sufficient quality or quantity. And therefore, this insufficient water quality and quantity influences the rights-based duties of municipalities towards local communities in relation to the environment and access to water as per sections 24 and 27 of the Constitution. So evidently, local governments are responsible for the protection and conservation of the environment, ecosystems, and the ecosystem services that these provide, and the realization of the aforementioned rights. So it seems therefore that local government instruments need to acknowledge the need to promote sustainability in the execution of municipal functions, including insofar as they intersect with water security and the protection of ecosystem services. Okay, so a few observations from the city of eThekwini. So the city of eThekwini is located in a biodiversity hotspot. It contains both terrestrial ecosystems as well as grasslands and forests, aquatic ecosystems such as rivers, oceans, and estuaries. And the eThekwini has significant challenges that it faces with regards to its ecosystems. Many of these rivers have become polluted by human activities and are continuing to degrade. So the eThekwini municipal area has 16 main rivers, which in addition to serving as a natural habitat for Durban's diverse species, it also supplies 90% of the region's water and serves as recreational areas for canoeing and other activities such as spiritual and cultural rituals. However, the degradation of eThekwini's rivers is increasing. And also, eThekwini's wetlands are significantly degraded, unable to support appropriate levels of biodiversity and biological productivity. So in response to the negative impacts that the city is facing, the city sought to adopt integrated planning approaches and the development controls that protect the integrity and enhance the functionality and resilience of Durban's biodiversity. So the main guiding document for the eThekwini municipality is the Integrated Development Plan. And the IDP acknowledges that the ecosystem services goods are critical to meeting the growth and development needs of the municipality and all its residents. So the Durban Metropolitan Open Space System, known as DMOS, aims to protect the city's biodiversity assets and core ecological infrastructure and to achieve such optimal ecosystem functionality and biodiversity conservation. So the DMOS is a spatial layer of interconnecting open spaces in public, private, and traditional authority ownership that seeks to protect the biodiversity and associated ecosystem services of Durban. So in its infancy, the DMOS existed purely as a municipal council policy directive, following formal adoption by the council in 2010. And the DMOS has subsequently been integrated into all relevant plans of the municipality and all its planning schemes as a control area or overlay. And so also in addressing the loss, depletion, and degradation, the eThekwini municipality aims to ensure the effective management of its ecosystem goods and services through many of its plans in the IDP. One of the objectives of the plans is to develop and sustain the spatial, natural, and built environment, through which it aims to ensure sustainable and integrated growth and development of the city. And this object is also aligned to the many provisions from national planning law and policies. So the municipality addresses this objective through its Municipal Spatial Development Framework, an integral component of the IDP, in line with the requirements of the Systems Act, SPLUMA, and the eThekwini Spatial Planning Bylaw. So this MSDF spatially represents the long-term development and intentions of the municipality and contains specific zoning provisions in the local land use schemes that allow the municipality to reserve or protect land related to environmental functions, such as ecosystem services. And as is apparent from the IDP, the municipality recognizes the natural environment, especially ecosystems and water resources, in terms of its municipal planning mandate. And from the outset, the municipality recognizes that ecosystems, including ecological infrastructure such as dams, rivers, and wetlands, are worthy of protection and conservation. And in this acknowledgement, the municipality goes further in providing concrete plans, goals, outcomes, and programs to enable this protection and conservation. Okay, so final thoughts. So the exact functions of local government in each of the dimensions of water security definitely requires more research. There's also a need for effective and constructive cooperative governance in the water sector. I haven't quite outlined the challenges faced in the water sector, but it is commonly known that holistic governance remains a challenge in the water sector. Furthermore, valuing natural areas for the ecosystem services they provide and implementing water-sensitive infrastructure principles requires a mindset change and retraining. So the legislative framework described above places an obligation on local government to protect the environment and its related ecosystem services, especially in relation to the provision and purification of water. However, this still remains a large challenge in local governments, and we need to move towards integrating ecological infrastructure into land use planning and decision making. But we've seen from the case of eThekwini municipality that where national legal frameworks fall short, municipalities can step up and include these concepts at local level planning in their laws and policies. And in summary, we need to distinguish and understand the importance of ecological infrastructure in natural and modified systems. We will really have complete information about the structure and function of a water-related ecosystem and therefore need to make the best decisions we can with partial information, but embark on a continuous learning process and facilitate feedback loops in an adaptive management process. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.